For 100 years, archaeologists were certain they knew who lay at the bottom of the sacred well in Chichén Itzá. Girls, young maidens, virgins, thrown in as sacrifices to the rain god. It was written in textbooks, it was told to tourists, it was featured in National Geographic documentaries. And then, in 2024, a single article was published in the journal Nature, after which this entire chapter of history will have to be rewritten completely. Because there was not a single girl in the well. Not one. All 64 skeletons are boys. And that's just the beginning. Let's figure out what was actually happening in Chichén Itzá and why this well is so important. Chichén Itzá is a massive Maya city on the Yucatan Peninsula in modern-day Mexico. The Pyramid of Kukulkan, the observatory, the ball court where, according to legend, the losers were killed. But the true heart of the city is not the pyramid, it's the cenote, a natural karst sinkhole nearly 60 meters in diameter, with almost sheer walls plunging down about 20 meters to the water, and the water goes another 13 meters deep. The Maya called it Cenote Sagrado, the sacred well, and for centuries, that is where they threw people. The first person to dive into this well was an American named Edward Thompson at the beginning of the 20th century. He bought all of Chichén Itzá. Yes, back then, you could just buy the ruins of an ancient civilization and hired divers. From 1904 to 1910, they hauled everything they could from the bottom. Gold masks, jade jewelry, ritual knives, ceramics, scraps of fabric, human bones, tons of bones. And these bones were sent to the Peabody Museum at Harvard, where they lay for over 100 years, waiting for science to finally take them seriously. And while the bones sat in boxes, a beautiful, horrifying, and completely false story settled into the public consciousness. The story of the virgins thrown into the well to appease the rain god Chake. Where did it come from? From a single phrase by the Spanish bishop Diego de Landa, who wrote in the 16th century that the Maya threw living people into the well as sacrifices. He didn't say they were girls. He didn't say they were virgins. But then another Spaniard, Diego de Cogaludo, added romantic details 100 years later, and after that, it spread like wildfire. The Victorian era adored such narratives. The pure maiden, the ancient priest, the dark well, the savage ritual, it sold, it thrilled. It was printed in books, drawn in engravings, performed in theaters. And here's where it gets really interesting. As far back as the 1960s, an anthropologist named Ernest Houghton looked at the bones and said, "Guys, something doesn't add up here. These don't look like skeletons of young women. There are a lot of children here. There are male features." But his work went unnoticed by the general public. Textbooks kept repeating the old fairy tale. Because giving up a beautiful story is always harder than inventing one. And now, 2024, an international team led by Rodrigo Barquera from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig takes 64 skeletons from this well for analysis. Not a visual examination, not measuring skulls, ancient DNA. The very technology that, over the last 15 years, has overturned everything we knew about human ancestors, about Neanderthals, about human migrations across the planet. What did they see? All 64 are boys, mostly between 3 and 6 years old. No girls, at all. 100% male. That's the first blow. The second blow is genetic relatedness. 25% of the boys were close relatives of each other. Brothers, cousins, nephews. And, what completely breaks your brain, they found 2 pairs of identical twins in the well. 2 pairs of monozygotic twins in a single sacrificial deposit should not happen. Statistically, it's almost impossible. If you randomly select people for sacrifice, twins won't turn up this often. What does that mean? It means they weren't chosen randomly. They were chosen specifically. And this is where the story stops being just a correction of an old mistake. Here, it turns into a detective story. Because twins for the Maya are not just twins, they are a sacred category. The Maya have an entire epic, the Popol Vuh. It's their book of myths, something like their Bible or the Edda. And at the very heart of the Popol Vuh is the story of 2 heroes. Hunahpu and Palenque, twins. They descend into Xibalba, the underworld, play ball with the lords of death, lose, are killed, are resurrected, defeat the lords of death, and transform into the sun and the moon. A story about twins who die and are resurrected. A story about twins who sacrifice themselves for a new world. And now imagine you are a Maya priest. You need to perform a ritual of the highest power. What do you throw into the well? Random people? Or those who literally embody the myth? Twins, brothers, boys from the same family, reenacting the archetype of Hunahpu and Palenque. It turns out, the boys were not simply killed. They were chosen to turn the ritual into a living recreation of the myth. It's not just sacrifice. It's theater on a cosmic scale, where the actors pay with their lives. All right, moving on. The scientists did one more thing. They looked not only at the genes, they looked at isotopes in the bones. Isotopes are chemical markers that remain in teeth and bones depending on what a person ate in childhood. From them, you can understand the approximate diet. And here, another layer opens up. The boys who ended up in the well ate similar food. Very similar. Not like ordinary peasant children from different villages rounded up at random, but as if they were raised together. Possibly with a specific purpose in mind. Possibly they were specially fed something particular, a specific type of corn, for example, because they were already marked as future sacrifices. Think about this. A little boy, 3, 4, 5 years old. He lives in a family where, perhaps, they already know that his fate is the well, or he is taken to the temple, fed, prepared, and one day, a priest takes him by the hand and leads him to the edge. Cruel, yes. Barbaric, of course, but not unique. The Aztecs had something similar. In Peru, the Inca had Capacocha, the ritual sacrifice of children whose mummies are found on the peaks of the Andes. All over the world, ancient cultures sacrificed precisely children. Because children's blood, in their view, was the purest, the most valuable, the most pleasing to the gods. But in the case of Chichén Itzá, there is another twist. Scientists traced the genetics not only of the victims themselves. They compared them to the modern inhabitants of the village of Tikal, a small Maya settlement very close to Chichén Itzá, where people still live according to traditions. And guess what? The modern inhabitants of Tikal carry the genetic traces of 16th century epidemics. When the Spanish came, they brought smallpox, measles, influenza. The Maya died in the millions. And in the genome of modern people, you can see it. They have genetic variants associated with resistance to salmonellosis. That means those who survived were those who could cope with the infections brought by the conquerors. This is evolution in action. This is the trace of a catastrophe, readable in DNA 500 years later. And one more detail. The DNA of the boys from the well is practically identical to the DNA of modern Maya. This means that the civilization did not disappear. I know you've heard the phrase, the disappearance of the Maya, 100 times in documentaries. It's a myth. The Maya never went anywhere. The cities emptied, that's true. Great centers like Tikal and Palenque were abandoned even before the Spanish arrived. But the people stayed. They live there now. 6 million people speaking different Maya languages in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, the same genes, the same faces, the same blood. So when someone tells you about the mysterious disappearance of the Maya, it's not a mystery, and it's not a disappearance. It's simply the collapse of political centers. Cities emptied because of droughts, because of wars, because soils were depleted. But the people simply scattered into villages and continued living, just like now. Back to the well. What does this study ultimately give us? It kills one myth and spawns a bunch of new questions. There were no virgins. The romantic story of sacrificed beauties did not happen. There was a cold, calculated, systematic, ritual execution of boys, chosen by kinship, possibly specially raised for this purpose, and among them, twins who reenacted the central narrative of the Maya religion. The next question arises, why boys? Why not girls? Not men, not elders? Here, scientists can only build hypotheses so far. Perhaps boys were associated with the maize god, who dies and is reborn. Perhaps young male bodies were considered the most valuable offering. Perhaps in the twin myth itself, the main heroes are male, and to reproduce the myth, boys were needed. Perhaps all of the above. And also, this well operated for a long time. A very long time. Radiocarbon dating shows that sacrifices continued there for more than 1 century. At least from 500 AD, possibly earlier. Meaning several generations of priests, several dynasties of rulers, a whole 1,000 years, and all that time, boys were thrown into the water. 1,000 years of ritual. Think about that scale. And one more thing worth mentioning. When the study came out, it caused quite a strong reaction among the modern Maya. Many were unhappy, not because they didn't like the results, but because their ancestors were once again taken apart, studied, and articles were published, all without serious dialogue with the descendants. This is a complex ethical question. Whose history is it? Who do the bones belong to? The scientists, the museum, the people? And it seems to me that any real archaeological discovery in the 21st century should go hand in hand with a conversation about this. Nevertheless, the fact remains a fact. A century ago, we told one story. Today, DNA tells another. And this new story is much more frightening, more deliberate, more human in the coldest sense of the word. Not savages throwing random captives into a well, but an organized religious system that selected victims with surgical precision for the sake of recreating a myth that millions of people believed in. What do we even do when we believe? We build entire worlds. We create rituals. We choose children and give them up. The Maya did this. The Aztecs did this. And if you look into the mirror of history, few great civilizations managed without something similar. The Romans had gladiators. The Carthaginians had Moloch and Tophets, where hundreds of children's urns are found. In the old world and the new, wherever there was dense population, dense religion, and enough power to organize ritual, everywhere there were such wells. Maybe not literal ones, but metaphorical ones for sure. And here the final thought arises. This well in Chichén Itzá, it's not just a well, it's a mirror. You can look into it and see not the Maya, see yourself. Because even now, civilizations choose whom to sacrifice. Who will bear the consequences of wars, economic crises, ecological catastrophes? We don't throw boys into a sacred well, but we make choices every day about whom to protect and whom to leave behind. And those choices too will be studied someday, 1,000 years from now, and perhaps they will wonder how we could. What do we know for certain after this study? That science can overturn century-old notions with a single article, that DNA is a time machine that doesn't lie, that beautiful stories passed from textbook to textbook must be regularly fact-checked, and that the Maya, a vanished, nowhere, living, real people, deserve to have their history told correctly. Not through colonial fantasies, not through Victorian romance, but through facts. Remember how I started? With the fact that for 100 years we were told about the virgins in the well. That story is no more. It died in 2024, under a microscope in Leipzig, when the sequencer produced the same letter on the Y chromosome 64 times in a row. And in its place, a new one has appeared, more precise, more terrifying, more true. Twins, brothers, boys chosen because they reenacted the gods. If you found this interesting, drop a like. It seriously helps stories like this reach people who also care about what really happened. Subscribe if you want me to keep digging into these histories, ones where science destroys myths and builds something more real in their place. And write in the comments what hooked you the most. The twins? The fact that the boys might have been prepared from childhood? Or that the modern Maya are the very same people whose ancestors lie in the well? I'm genuinely curious how you took all this in. See you